problem with travel restrictions. Because of the pandemic, few people could not come to Dortmund here. This is why we have some online connections, and you've already heard the voice of one of them. So, since we're having a good start, I will take you on a journey.
That is wildlife, be it a hare, be it a running giraffe, an eating deer, or a lion. I mean, this affects us, influences us. That is, certain thoughts occur to us, some associations, so everybody then enters their own world. And as far as dead animals are concerned, that is antlers on a wall or the fur of a lion in front of the fireplace, it also does something to us and it triggers thoughts, but these differ from person to person. And that is what we are going to talk about today. That is, we will talk about what this is about. We will be talking about hunting. We will be talking about exotic trophies and the giraffe, lion, and so on. This is very controversial, and for this reason we will be having a very interesting discussion today. And that is why we're having this event. This is not an exchange between experts, but we want to talk with you. And for this reason, we also have panelists from Africa, but we didn't invite them. And that is the tricky point here about this event. That is, we did not invite them, but they invited us, because we do not have any giraffes in our forests here. There are no lions in their dens here, but these are the nature of African people. So this is a discussion at the invitation of Resource Africa, and I will shortly introduce the panelists to you. I hope that you will also make contributions, be it here in the room, be it online. You may ask questions, and we will have a Q&A session as well. But now first I would like to give the floor to our host. You have already heard her voice. It's Leslie Dunson. She's the Managing Director of Resource Africa, Southern Africa, and she's not only the Managing Director, but she's also a lawyer, and she is also an expert for international law, and she's an advocate of indigenous people and their right to use sustainable resources. She has already done a lot. She has also created some precedents, and we will be talking about what this means to us, to our subject, but now the floor is hers. She will be welcoming us.
Jetzt hat das Wort aber tatsächlich zur Begrüßung von uns allen Leslie Johnson.
Good day, everyone. My name is Leslie Janssen. I'm the CEO for Resource Africa, Southern Africa. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the first international conference for wildlife management focusing on Africa, conservation, human rights and sustainable use, hosted in the city of Dortmund. Resource Africa is a transnational organization that supports African community efforts to secure their rights to access and use their natural resources to sustain their livelihoods. We help to build strong platforms for collaboration, knowledge, skills, and joint advocacy, such as today, to ensure that community voices are heard in the debates that materially affect their lives. We believe that when rights are upheld and incentives for conservation are provided to those who live with wildlife, there are positive conservation outcomes benefiting both people and nature. There are hundreds of communities made up of millions of rural Africans that are engaged with wildlife conservation inside conservancies, and the Communities Leaders Network of Southern Africa is our partner organization that provides a platform for representatives of these communities and their supporting organizations in 9 Southern Africa countries to strengthen community-based natural resource management in the region. The purpose of this event is to create an opportunity for African and European stakeholders in the field of conservation and wildlife management to discuss solutions, to inform policies that affect countries and their communities to both continents, Several international movements and national policies provide a backdrop for our deliberations today, particularly those that call for the ban on the importation of hunting trophies into European countries. Communities in Africa are the frontline biodiversity conservationists, which makes them critical stewards of our wildlife during this biodiversity and climate change challenges. Communities in Africa are stewards of wildlife in the most difficult circumstances. The world therefore needs rural African communities, especially such as in Southern Africa, to be protected against any threats to their way of life, to their livelihoods, especially because they deliver this critical service to our environment. Hunting is an important way of them using, managing, conserving, and protecting our diversity, especially our wildlife in Southern Africa. I'd like to quote the words of our colleague, Ms. Maxie Louis, stating, "Hunting is our bread and butter issues in Southern Africa, and nothing states more aptly what the role of hunting is in Africa. This relationship with hunting is not random. It is well regulated and well managed. Hunting is associated with increasing wildlife, not decreasing it." We are not saying there are not challenges, there are, but more than that, the revenue from hunting over time contributed to schools being built, clinics being built, it contributed to children's education, it helped to create teachers. These are the things that matter, namely biodiversity and people. It is a biocultural relationship which cannot be separated. To deprive communities of that revenue from hunting will have disastrous consequences for Africa. I wish to commend the Community Leaders Network, whose aspirations were recently affirmed and supported by the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. It is the human rights body of the African Union situated in the Gambia, where they recently adopted a historic decision called Resolution 489, which affirms rural African communities' rights to sustainably use, manage, and conserve their natural resources, which clearly includes wildlife. While we are proud of Africa's highest regional body affirming our communities' right to sustainably use their wildlife, we are concerned about these impending anti-hunting laws in Europe. Hunting trade bans are seldom effective for conservation or conserving of wildlife, and it is directly going to impact many communities' livelihoods. We are nonetheless greatly encouraged by the willingness for these dialogues, and we would like these dialogues to continue with those calling for these hunting trade bans. It is important. I trust that our live and online audiences will use this opportunity to further their understanding of the relationships between hunting, conservation, and community rights. I wish to express my heartfelt thanks to the organizers and to all of the panelists who are with us today. I trust that your discussions will be fruitful and enlightening. I hereby open the first conference for wildlife management under the theme of Africa, conservation, human rights, and community rights. Thank you.
Well, Leslie has already described the subject, has outlined many different aspects which we will also be touching upon, and I would like to introduce the panelists to you, and of course I will be starting with those who had the longest distance travel here. That is Monsieur Pilar Luis from NACSO Namibia. Hello Maxi, welcome here. And Maxi is the director of NACSO, as I said, and she works with a group of NGOs. She supports this group of NGOs in the field of livelihood and governance, but of course also natural resource management, and this includes also the training of people, of community members, also about how to protect wildlife. Then Mrs. Gail Potgieter, she's the communications manager of the Namibian Chamber of the Environment. You're welcome as well, of course. Gail. Gail is a nature conservation biologist, and she works in the field of the man-predator conflict mitigation. That is, whenever man and animals meet or are confronted with one another, and well, if they shouldn't be there. And she works mainly in the conservancies of Namibia, and this is a pioneering project, and we will be hearing more about this in the course of the discussion. Now I'm entering the virtual space because, as I implied, the other members of the Community Leader Network were not able to travel to Germany, but Roger Lubilo is joining us. Hello, Roger, raise your hand, please, so that we can see who you are. He is the chairman. No, he can't hear me. Could you please raise your hand? Roger? Roger is the chairman of CLN from Zambia. He's an expert for governance, and in particular he's an expert for capacity building. So it may well be that because of the internet on, we might have a delay or the picture might be frozen, but I trust it will work. Siluka Simasiko from Botswana, he's also joining us online. I'm very pleased that it's working. He's the chairman of Congo, which is a group comprising 50 NGOs in the Gambiland, and they are involved in the sustainable and economic development. This also includes, but not only, the management of the natural livelihood, the resources. And there are also two ladies. These are our two European panelists, Dr. Delis Rowe. She is the chairwoman of the Sustainable Leaders and Livelihood Specialist Group within the World Nature Conservation Organization, that is of the IUCN, and she's responsible for nature conservation. And she placed the focus on the human dimension of nature conservation. And we also have Professor Amy Dixon from Oxford University, and her special interest is for the protection and conservation of wildlife. And here the point is again, well, if people are where they're not supposed to be, where animals do not expect them. And there was also Professor Adam Hart on the list. We would have liked to welcome him, but I'm afraid he's not available. He's traveling in the bush, and we're having internet problems, connectivity problems, but he said that he would try to join us online, and we hope that it will work. And as you have realized, there are two more empty chairs here. And I would also like to welcome, where is he? Professor Stan Herzog from the Technical University of Dresden. And he's the man with the wolf here. That is, he will talk about how we are dealing with the growing population of wild wolves. That is what the impact of this is, and often the side effects are not that pleasant. And the last chair is Stefan Michel's chair. He's the co-speaker of the German Eurasia group of the NABU. And this is a voluntary and honorary group of experts within NABU, which, or you said you are very familiar with the red list with respect to protected animals, that is huge animals, that is, for instance, mountain goats and so forth. And he also cooperates with Zuli, so there are some overlapping areas, some interconnections. A brief question to all of you, also in the virtual space. If you could briefly raise your hand, who among you is a hunter? Who goes hunting among you? Are there any hunters among us? There might again be a delay. And who among you eats meat? Okay, 2 meat eaters, 2 carnivores, oh no, 2, 3, 4. Sioko, do you eat meat? It may know that the link may not be working, but anyway, we have already.
No, we do eat meat, yes.
Yes, of course. Okay, thank you very much.
Now then, so this is the panel, our expert panel from Africa and from Europe, and now I would like to move on to Stefan Robinet. He is my co-chair this afternoon, and Stefan, you have already assembled your group. Yes, we are well prepared. Thank you, Constanze. The subject of hunting wildlife, hunting animals. It's a very emotional subject, not only in Africa, all over the world, and in Dortmund. A couple of months ago, there was a controversial discussion in the City Council. There was a discussion about a ban on hunting trips at the exhibition Jagd und Hund, which is a regular show here, and 4 of 5 persons present also attended the debate there, and now we are having representatives of the City Council present here. That is 5 people from 3 parties, and they agreed across party borders to be introduced in the alphabetical order. And I will start with Mrs. Diewisch, Die Partei, and I'll ask the question of you, which I announced before, so that you could prepare your answer. And within 1 minute, please tell us what has brought you here, because many politicians didn't come here, and what is your link with Africa? Oh, I'm here simply because we had the time, because, well, we must divide the work, and I'm interested in this subject because I have no links to hunting or Africa, but I was confronted with this. I had to form an opinion, and I thought it would make sense for me to listen to the expert opinions here in order to improve my knowledge about these things. Next to me, Mr. Erstfeld from the SPD. So the same question, what is your link to the question and to Africa? Well, it's similar for me. Actually, I have nothing in common with Africa, I'm afraid, with the exception of some few holidays. And I'm interested in this subject above all to find out what the local interests are, that is on the ground. We talk about this from our point of view here in Germany, but what is the point of view of the local population who's most affected by this? This is why I'm here. Thank you. Then on my left, Mr. Grimm, also from Die Partei. And, well, you know the question. I'm not a hunting expert, but I've often visited Africa, Uganda, Zambia, and other countries in Africa. And for this reason, I'm very interested in this matter. And I feel it's really important for the future and the world that we actually assign this to the responsibility of the local communities, and we should not impose anything from here, from Europe, from the US, and it should not only be about profit. Mr. Schlienkamp, please, now. Mr. Schlienkamp from the SPD, the second SPD representative, the largest political group on the council. You know the question, what is your answer? Yeah, the first thing which links me to Africa is a personal link, because unfortunately, I spent my holidays in Germany, but with 2 friends, 2 brothers, who are from Cameroon. And they always spent their summer holidays with their grandparents in Germany, and they were my neighbors. So this is my personal background. And the second point why I am here today is because I find that the motion is too limited. No, we have not yet talked about the motion on the City Council. Yeah, it's about banning hunting trips. You can expand on this later. Just one comment. Well, I think I can make a contribution towards this. You will shortly have an opportunity, Mr. Vogler, CDU, the 3rd biggest political group on the Council. The Green are still ahead of you, but not here. Tell us why you are here on behalf of the CDU. Apart from the fact that I'm a council member, I'm also a hunter, and I often hear these complaints, these prejudices, and actually I was very annoyed by this debate. I also talked with Mr. Genet on the City Council, that is the Green member, with his party, and I believe that the proper people are sitting here who know more about this. And in addition to many videos of my grandparents who often were in Africa, well, I have the same thing. It's actually a very emotional continent because I experienced nature in all its purity there, and so I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Yeah, there was some music from a mobile phone. We will keep talking. You may sit down again. I think it's a bit more comfortable. And we are talking from this place here where I'm standing. Everybody who's present in the room can also voice their opinions, but you would have to come here because I've got the only microphone, but I will share it with you. And furthermore, with this iPad, I will forward questions to the panel, because I've heard that some hundreds of people have already joined us via the internet. And may the discussion start now, perhaps also with those who are not present. The party which would have been important is not present here, that is the Green Party. They actually filed this motion and they couldn't send anybody. Apparently nobody has time, but they are not the only ones not to be here. Yeah, actually that's a prominent group which is not represented here. We also invited more people, that is the animal welfare organization, that is the critics, that is those who have made many of the statements we're going to talk about. And I will read out the list of invitations, that is those who didn't come, who didn't respond for whatever reason. On the one hand, it was the WWF, the Animal Welfare Organization, then Pro Wildlife, the organization Future for Amazons, the Humane Society International, and the Animal Rights Watch ARIBA, that is the abbreviation. And we will be hearing this a bit more often today, because we considered how should we proceed, because it's of little use for us to have an internal discussion, and there should also be somebody with the opposite arguments. And for this reason we came up with some frequent questions, and which symbolize this policy. We will show them to you. We are always talking about hunting, in particular trophy hunting in Africa, and we will start with the first statement which was made by ARIBA, and we will start right away. This is it. As during colonial times, wealthy trophy hunters shot down threatened animals. This is a sentence which is very symbolic, very meaningful, and it's from the ARIBA petition to the Dortmund City Council. And this petition requests, as we've heard, the end of hunting trip offers here at the show Jagd and Hund in Dortmund. Yeah, colonial times. So people who can afford it go to Africa to kill elephants and lions or whatever. And so we will ask Africa, that is, I will ask Mike C, is it so? Is it true? Are they still colonial times we're living in, or is this the past?
Thank you so much. I would like to start by saying we have moved on. We have moved on. This is the past, but I would quickly like to make a statement before I answer, and that is, we cannot have discussions about Africa without Africans, and I think that is my statement starting like that. But there's also the notion that before colonialism, Africans had no brains, they could not think for themselves, they could not trade. My history, my ancestors say that we traded even before colonialists came to Africa. And it's something I think that is forgotten. It's just when colonialists came that we saw that there was trade and we could talk for ourselves, which is untrue. If you go back into our history, we were doing these things. Hunting was part of it. We were trading. So for me, it's not true. It's not our history, and I think we should start changing the way we understand history from an African perspective. And probably I would like my colleagues online also to add, but that is my statement.
Yeah.
This is why I would like to forward this question now first to Botswana, please, to Sioka Simasiku. And Sioka, do you still feel that you're living in colonial times?
Yeah.
We are not, but we can be living in colonial times only if Europe starts putting laws that puts us back into colonial times. Currently, we have moved on, and we want the world to understand that. Thank you.
This is a very clear statement, thank you. And also to the chairman of the Community Leader Network, Mr. Biller.
Thank you all the viewers. Yes, I would like to contribute. Yes, I think we have moved as African communities or African people. I think we've moved a miles away, and I think we would like to be appreciated as being part of the global community with the equal footing and equal understanding. So we would like to appreciate that, yes, we need to cooperate at different levels, but it's important that even the global world must respect and appreciate our existence as African communities. And like Max did mention, and my colleague, yeah, we started doing these things long before colonialism came to Africa or to our continent. Yeah, so we would like to actually use this platform today to advance our agenda, our African agenda, that is based on mutual respect and respect for our rights. Thank you.
Before discussing about the question here, I would ask the last participant, Dilys Rowe, what her view is. With the World Nature Protection Union, you also work with this. And how do you see this type of trophy hunting? Is this still a remnant of obsolete times?
I think my African colleagues have already given a really good response to this, and I really like the point that actually sort of trying to interfere in wildlife management in Africa is far more colonial than rich people going to Africa to do trophy hunting. I just wanted to pick up on the other point in that statement about it being about wealthy people going to Africa to shoot wildlife and querying, why it should be a problem that wealthy people go to Africa. Wealthy people also go to Africa to go for tourism. Surely if people are going to go to Africa and participate in hunting, then we want to capture as much money as possible from that activity. So it needs to be a very expensive activity, and for that money to then get ploughed back into conservation. So much rather one very wealthy person paying an awful lot of money than 100 people not paying very much money at all to do the same activity.
Yeah, that's a very interesting aspect. That is, who is the proper target group? And we'll come back to this. And I think we should now ask our participants here. This was a comment for the City Council of Dortmund.
Genau, die Stadträte haben sich
Yes,
teilweise
correct.
gegenseitig ein bisschen in den Weg verstellt.
City councillors have been really quick here to come here. I would like to ask one of you here whether the voices, the statements from Africa, we've just heard a few of them, have they already been taken into consideration in the City Council meetings in Dortmund? Because technically speaking, it's not a problem. We can connect people from Africa here to Germany, to Dortmund. So was it also possible in your City Council meeting? Would you like to answer this question? So please come to me here with a microphone. I must stay here because of the camera. So, okay, no, I won't give you the microphone. I'll hold it for you. Okay, not really like you've described it, but my inbox, my email inbox was really filled by animal protectionist organizations from Germany, but also from Africa, who all want the same, which is what the African representatives have also said here today. It was already described in many, many emails. Did I understand you correctly? It was animal rights activists from Germany have said, let Africans decide. Is that what they said? Quite clearly. I mean, the petition of the Greens was it must be banned, but the email from Africans and from others goes into the opposite direction. I think this is a very important distinction we must make. And this is exactly what this discussion is about here today. Would anybody else like to come in? Oh, I can't see any more requests for the floor at the moment. But there's one online question coming in here, which I would like to give to you now. Angelika Herre from the party Mensch, Umwelt, Tierschutz, Man, Environment and Animal Protection. She's asking, isn't it really the case that people are not coming to this meeting here as a sign of protest? They maybe would have time to attend. Ms. R. doesn't tell us who this question is for, but I think it's for the members of the City Council. Would you like to come in? I think Mr. Vogler, you're ready to take this question. Can we know who Ms. R. is? No, okay. Well, she said she's a member of that party. And she's got a question. Well, her assumption is that there are people who don't attend this meeting because it's a sign of protest. Okay, I mean, it's a valid question, of course, and we can discuss it, and we can also discuss whether hunting trips should be offered by Jagd und Hund exhibition and so on. But in the City Council, I think there was a clear majority against. So at the end of this meeting, I think we gave this to an ethical committee, which is fine, but not to attend this meeting as a sign of protest, I think it is something I don't understand, because at the end of the day, we must discuss. We've heard the statements from Africa. I think it's quite clear. I think people rather shy away from this discussion. They shirk the discussion because they know what the outcome of the meeting was, and the statements from the countries was quite clear. Okay, and very full email inboxes, as you said. Okay, let's have this question here in the room. I mean, if somebody doesn't attend, it's also a kind of statement, if you like, and we want to discuss here, of course. And since we don't have live representatives here, I would like to quote from the Arriva petition once again. There's another statement from the petition. In Africa alone, 18,000 trophy hunters annually kill over 100,000 wild animals. Well, this is not a good figure, of course. 100,000 wild animals, if we imagine these rhinos and others with their furs. Well, we must talk about this, I think. Professor Herzog, I think you must put this into perspective. 100,000 wild animals in Africa being killed. Could you put this into perspective for us? Well, okay, let's start with a figure. 100,000, of course, is a big figure compared with those in Germany. The game killed in Germany, it's about 2 million in Germany alone. So, I mean, it's not that impressive then. By way of comparison. But of course, in the background to this figure and in the background to this statement, it shows that killing as such, or killing wild animals, is more and more becoming something that is a very strange concept to people. I mean, dying or killing is part of nature, always. I mean, it's always being born and dying in this natural cycle. And I think it's the second aspect of this statement that you should keep at the back of your mind. So, yes, it's like really an emotional level and not an objective level, if you like. Okay, so 18,000 hunters, you've said. Let's ask Professor Dickman from the UK. Maybe you could also put this into perspective. You're an expert as well. Is this a figure that leaves you calm, or should we think about this also if you put this into perspective? 18,000 hunters, 100,000 animals being killed. What does it tell you?
Thank you very much. Well, as a conservation scientist, for me, it is not as much about the pure numbers, but it is about the impacts of those numbers. So if those hunters and that revenue coming in can actually secure habitat, for example, we know that habitat loss is the biggest threat to biodiversity, including all of these species that we're talking about. So we need to make sure that we actually take a step back from just focusing on the numbers and the emotions, as you've touched on there, but the outcomes for conservation. And that's what I am concerned about. And actually the data shows that not only is trophy hunting not a threat, not a primary threat to any species that we're aware of at the moment, but also it does help protect against the far bigger threats, like habitat loss, like poaching, like conflict with people to some extent. So these things, you've got to look at where the costs and the benefits lie. And while those numbers can scare people, from our experience in, say, southern Tanzania, where you remove economic incentives, we were having the lion killing, for example, was 50 to 100 times higher than would have been permitted in a trophy hunting area. So trophy hunting is just one aspect. We have to think about the big picture together and the risks that come, particularly with trophy hunting bans, if you don't actually put a better wildlife-based land use in. So, for example, in South Africa, there are about 18 million large mammals that are conserved through trophy hunting areas. And that's something that we have to put these figures into perspective and think about it from my perspective as the conservation outcome.
Okay,
thank you. These are completely different figures, of course, and this is a completely different perspective. We shouldn't just look at the numbers of killed animals as such or per se. Germany, okay, let's go to Botswana, to Simasiko. In Germany, there's a very emotional discussion about browsing damage in the forest, deer, for example, creating a lot of damage in our forests. And this is why people say more game should be killed. Is this an aspect for Africa? What's the role of hunting in Africa?
Basically, in Africa, the role is more on sustainable measures and at the same time incentivizing the communities that are living with wildlife within those areas. If I give you an example for Botswana, about 283,000 people, which actually have 45 community-based organizations, depend on trophy hunting for their sustainability or for their day-to-day income or revenues. So in 2014, as you know, Botswana basically imposed a blanket ban just to actually see the species that were actually depleted by that. So the government just put a blanket ban and said, no, there's no hunting until 2019, when the hunting ban was lifted. But during this period, a lot of communities who were basically depending on hunting, some of them closed. There was no revenue within those communities. So basically hunting here in Africa is very important, because we don't just go out and start hunting. There is methods that are used. The government would actually put out a quota for communities after a thorough survey to actually basically see where the number of animals. And this is just done within the areas that are outside protected areas. That should actually be noted, that hunting is not happening in protected areas. It's happening outside protected areas, in areas where communities are living, where communities are doing their agricultural practices. So this is, what is happening. So the revenue that is actually taken from hunting, it's 100% utilized by communities. It's not basically, taken by government for their use. It's 100% utilized by communities. The community decide what to do with the income that comes from hunting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's actually generating income based on hunting. I've just seen somebody raising their hand. Stefan, is that correct? Yes, yes, right. The discussion has already called for another interesting question from Walter Jicker. He's writing, I would like to ask the organizations and parties who don't attend today whether in Africa there's a party or an organization which would ban European deer hunting. So, a question for our African representatives, of course. I mean, I don't know who is going to take this question. Community Leaders Network, maybe? Maybe the CEO, Roger? Roger, are you going to take this question? Have you heard about this? Rogers Lobilo, can you take this question?
Yes, I would like to take up that question, but I think maybe the translation a bit, I missed the point. What is the question?
Ja,
I think I didn't get it.
Ich wiederhole die Frage
I will
etwas
repeat the
langsamer auf
question
Deutsch.
for you.
Es geht darum, ob es in
The question was whether in Africa there's any organization or a political party which would ask to ban a hunting deer in Europe.
Okay, thank you. If I heard you properly, you're asking whether in Africa there is a political party that would advocate the ban of hunting in Europe. If I got you correct, if I got you correct, not to my knowledge, and I think our African politicians are very responsible. They will not seek to interfere in the sovereignty of other countries. And I think in the similar manner, my response then is that it becomes very strange when we see our political colleagues in the European states or other Western countries are sitting and trying to pass laws that will affect how we conduct our business as African communities. Yeah, so I think I haven't heard of any political system in Southern Africa or Africa trying to impose laws or to tell Europe how to behave with their wildlife and so on. So in a similar manner, I think we'll be saying it is quite immoral if other politicians in Europe, for instance, will sit to make laws that will impact on us or our conservation efforts without really consulting or listening to us. Yeah. If I missed the point, Max, I think you can pick it up.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. It was absolutely clear. The standpoint, of course, is also absolutely clear. I mean, it really sounds absurd. I mean, yes, the question has caused some momentum here, or some reaction. Mr. Grimm from the party.
Provocative question, because if we had like thousands of Africans coming here for hunting licenses, probably this would have been a discussion in Africa too. But I don't know about any African tourists coming here for hunting or to Europe for hunting. So, of course, it's not a discussion in Africa because it's not really happening.
Yeah. Dann lass uns hier an dieser Stelle
okay, then let's put this hypothetical question to the side for the time being. But I would like to ask Dilys Rowe, what is so wrong if a German or European animal rights organization is concerned about animals or wildlife in other countries? I mean, first of all, it's really a positive thing, isn't it, to say, yes, we're concerned, we feel responsible. Could you understand this from a sort of high-level abstract approach?
Yeah, I can completely understand it, and I can completely understand the aversion of organizations and individuals to hunting and to trophy hunting in particular. I mean, you know, it does seem counterintuitive that you would want to kill animals as a contribution to conservation. But I think the challenge is that this is a complex issue, and the way some people present it, animal rights organizations and others, I'm not saying animal rights organizations are particularly bad, but people try and present these issues in very simplistic black and white ways. So it's as if to say, the argument seems to be, if we banned trophy hunting, there would be no killing of animals and everybody would live happily ever after. The reality is that just isn't the case for a number of reasons. First, a lot of wildlife populations have to be controlled anyway for conservation reasons. Secondly, if local people don't get any income from wildlife and have no benefit from it, but still have to put up with the cost of living with it, then they're going to kill that wildlife regardless. So, and it will probably be killed in much more horrible ways than ways that might happen if it was subject to trophy hunting. Plus, it would be far more uncontrolled in terms of the types and the age, the gender of the individuals that were killed. So I think, yes, everybody's entitled to their own moral perspectives and ethical perspectives on hunting, but that has to be placed in the reality of what conservation on the ground and rural livelihoods on the ground actually look like in Africa, and not some romanticized vision of Africa that some people have never visited, never experienced, and have only ever seen on television. That's just not Africa in reality, and that's not how life works, unfortunately. So, yes, all these well-meaning can get these well-meaning intentions, but sadly they often don't reflect the reality of what needs to be done to secure conservation on the ground and what local people need in order for them to tolerate dangerous wild animals around them.
Thank you. So, more differentiated ways to look at that would be important. Stefan? Yes, maybe I can also share my perspective as a long-term member of a nature conservation association, but I'm also representing my own opinion here. We've had large projects to protect the snow leopard. Snow leopard hunting other animals. Well, it would be logical to say we ban the import of the wild goat and wild sheep in order to have the snow leopard survive. However, it's quite the opposite, and you must make this analysis. Trophy hunting or hunting tourism, it's not only about trophies, but it's about experiencing nature, of course, leads to the fact that the communities where the snow leopard live are interested in having a large number of sheep and goats who are the prey of the snow leopard, and that they can actually turn very old. If that income didn't exist, many more of the wild sheep would be killed by the people to cook at a younger age, that is. And in Germany, for example, we have shooting rates of 50% of the spring population. A German deer won't become as old as an animal in Central Asia, and a relative of that. So we must look closer. We must really know how many people are killed in terms of production, how old do animals get, what's the impact on the population. And very frequently, hunting tourism compared with other management or use of the animals is much more environmentally friendly and has a lower impact on nature conservation and animal rights. Would you like to come in? Yes, I think it's a clear message. If somebody is here next to the microphone, of course, this person wants to put a question. Ms. Divish, well, we in the City Council have discussed whether we should make advertisements for this here in the Dortmund exhibition. I find it difficult to imagine that somebody puts up these trophies in their living room at home, but okay, if people like it. But I think it's difficult to make advertisements for that. I think that people who are interested find these things on the web, find their way to do that, to go there. But I think public advertising is a difficult thing. Okay, this is a clear statement. So you're saying, okay, hunting tourism, okay, you don't like it, but it's a personal opinion. Well, but it's about protecting the population. It's not about somebody putting up this trophy in their living room. I find that difficult. Yes, okay, but maybe we could also ask our African representative, Maxi, maybe, if you would like to come in, or Gail. I mean, do you find it necessary to make advertisements, or would hunters find their way to Africa at any rate without advertising?
Yeah, I think with any marketing, really it comes down to marketing. Even if you're talking about phototourism, you could say, well, let's limit the opportunities for lodges to market their beds, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense because those lodges will still be there, they will still operate. You're just reducing the income, really. If you reduce marketing, you're going to reduce income. And the important thing from the African perspective, as I think Gillis was mentioning, in terms of wealthy people coming, is that you really want the money to come in. That's really the point. So by limiting, restricting advertising, restricting marketing, you're really just restricting the income. And by restricting the income, you're reducing the value of those animals. And reducing the value, then it's basically a competition really between different land uses. So if your value of wildlife is up here, and your value of livestock is here, and you reduce the value of wildlife through marketing restrictions or whatever, then suddenly livestock becomes more productive. So that land gets switched to livestock because the value of wildlife has been depressed artificially. So you really want a fair competition on the market, and that will then translate into land use practices.
Ja, aber die Frage ging ja, ach so, Entschuldigung.
Ja, der Gesprächsverlauf regt, nein, weiß nicht, ob er aufregt, aber anregt.
It's a very lively discussion, I must say. Mr. Vogeler from the Christian Democratic Party. No, I'm all relaxed. I wanted to say, I'd rather have exhibitors at Jagd und Hund exhibition who are certified. That is much better than having like a little CD or the black sheep advertising on the internet. I mean, the debate in the City Council meeting was rather about whether we can tell Africans how to deal with it. I mean, the continent has also invited us, but I think we should leave it to everybody individually to decide whether they want to hunt, whether they want to put the trophies in their living room. We should reduce the tension a little bit and also the emotional character of the discussion. Mr. Vogeler from the City Council of Dortmund. Thank you. Stefan, that is also a very nice link to another footage we've had from the European parliamentarian Markus Pieper, who has also made a statement.
Thank you for your contribution today against European and German arrogance. Often there is browsing caused by excessive elephant population, and that has a different impact than when we talk only about wild boar or deer in Germany, and when in Botswana or Zimbabwe you want to prevent browsing by means of sustainable hunting, then this is a matter for the African countries and not for European knows-it-all. That's a very strong statement, and we leave it as such now. But now first I would like to contribute a different view, which we also prepared. That is one of the usual critical points. Every year, hundreds of trophies of internationally protected species are imported to Germany. Among these, leopards, elephants, wolves, polar bears, rhinos, and Tibetan sheep. And Tibetan sheep are the part of your focus points. Yeah, this is so. And for instance, I also prepared the red list classification of the big Tibetan sheep. It's a wild sheep in Asia. And they are in great demand because they have huge horns and they're very attractive to hunters, but they're protected. No, the red list of the IUCN is only a classification of the risk, and right now they are not threatened by extinction. They are only on the early warning list, so to speak. But The problem is not the trophy hunting, but excessive livestock management, animal husbandry and poaching. And that is what Gil Hofstadter said, when people are willing to pay a lot of money for a Tibetan sheep, which must also grow old, that is, it has actually produced a large number of young sheep, then there is an incentive not to poach the animals, but to allow them to grow old, and there is an incentive to at least reduce livestock management so that there is enough to eat for the sheep. And I would like to add, an international protected species is probably a reference to the Washington Agreement on the Protection of Species, and there are several rules, and all animals imported to Germany are imported on the basis of the proper permits from the countries of origin, and with respect to most species mentioned here, they are imported on the basis of German permits, and this is based on a very strict scientific assessment of the risk which the removal of an animal from the population constitutes. And in all cases, these imports have been assessed as positive or at least not harmful. And that is the point of the specialized department of the German Ministry for Nature Conservation. They also here experts, and you can rest assured that no species are illegally imported. Yeah, we are only talking about legal imports because we cannot really discuss about illegal imports. Hunting should be sustainable. This has been said a couple of times. Not just hunting, but the hunt should be sustainable. That is, the animal populations should be allowed to survive. And sustainable also means that people have their livelihoods. And as far as sustainability is concerned, we will be hearing another voice directly from Namibia. That is the Namibian Chamber of the Environment, Chris Brown.
Ich bin kein Jäger. Es wird Ihre Zuschauer vielleicht überraschen, dass ich seit meinem 11. Lebensjahr Vegetarier bin.
I'm not a hunter, and you may be surprised that I have been a vegetarian since I was 11 years old. But from an intellectual point of view, the biodiversity and biological point of view, I also appreciate trophy hunting because it's important for nature conservation. I advocate it if it's done properly, and questions of animal welfare should be taken into account, but please consider that animal protection and animal rights are completely different things. And by abolishing trophy hunting, you will actually put at risk the commitment of the people in Africa with respect to the wildlife. And the incentives for successful nature conservation are removed, and we will end up like Europe with its charismatic wildlife when the tools are removed to convince the rural population that they can live with this wildlife. And the people in the NGOs in Europe who call for donations in order to put a ban on trophy hunting will not send this money to Africa. No, they live very comfortable. So this was Brown, the director of the Namibian Chamber for the Environment. And we have a representative of this chamber sitting here. And could you please tell us what the general duty of the chamber is in Namibia so that we get a better idea of this?
So the Namibian Chamber of Environment is really an umbrella organisation for about 70 other conservation organisations. So it's very broad. It's a broad church, as it were. It's all about environmental management and protection. So it's everything from environmental impact assessments through to community conservation. So even the communities that Maxi works with, Maxi organisations also under the umbrella of the Namibian Chamber of Environment. So it's a lot of very different perspectives, but in general, all of those organisations are united in saying that the sustainable use of wildlife has a very important place in Namibia's conservation. So even though there's many in the NCE who don't necessarily like wildlife, the hunting of wildlife, they don't like trophy hunting. They have personal opinions about it, maybe they have disagreements about quotas, but as a general concept, the sustainable use of wildlife is accepted as an important part of Namibia's conservation model. So the NCE is really a place where the environmental sector can engage with the government of Namibia and also international government and also educate the public. So we have a website called conservationnamibia.com, and in that website we try and basically bring the message of what conservation means to Namibians to the general public, be they in Europe, in the US, around the world. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's been very important for us to get a better idea of your field of action, of your remit. Chris Brown has just been saying that he appreciates trophy hunting as a means to protect nature. And now I would like to allow you to hear the next statement from German animal welfare activists. Trophy hunting is often explained with conservation because part of the revenues is channeled into conservation programs, and this doesn't make moral sense. Some animals must die so that other animals are properly protected. Now then, what are we supposed to do now? Does it ring a bell? Is it ethical, moral? Ethical? Well, ethics does not necessarily mean that you hunt or do not hunt. It's about how you hunt, and we've been saying that we advocate sustainable hunting. That is what we need at the international level and here. Not everything here is sustainable in hunting, but we are working at this. We're trying to improve it. And this aspect in the discussion is leading us into the wrong direction, because we do need the incentives to protect people, and it must also benefit humans in the animal. I must have something which is a benefit to me, and then people will protect animals, and animals which humans do not care about, they will be losing out. That's the experience we've made in Central Europe and all over the world. That is, whenever people benefit from animals, they are more willing to protect animals. And they are more willing to also take into account ethical aspects of species conservation and animal welfare. And well, because we want to protect the species as such, and animal welfare is what we must also ensure in hunting. And both are part of hunting sustainability, that is the three dimensions: ecological, economic and socio-cultural. Amy Dickman, please. We must benefit from animals, Professor Herzog has said. What could it be? Could you be more specific, please? We briefly touched upon one thing. That is, there must be a financial benefit for the communities on the ground who live there. And what other benefits are conceivable?
Well, I think there should be benefits to the national governments as well, and this is often forgotten, it seems, in these debates, that the focus, and it's very, very important that the local communities are central and the rights are central, but actually, touching back to the main threats to biodiversity, again, the main threat is the loss of natural habitat. And the incentives provided both by phototourism and by trophy hunting, these big wildlife-based land uses incentivize the governments to actually put that land and keep it aside for wildlife. And that's hugely important for actually protecting these massive populations often of wildlife against loss. And these are often very small quotas that we're dealing with. So I think it's really important to recognize this is not just about trophy hunting. You don't necessarily need trophy hunting in these areas, but you need something that is based on the presence of wildlife, that generates incentives for the local communities and for the governments to keep that land under a wildlife-based land use. And for many people think you can easily just switch phototourism for trophy hunting, and that is not the case. In most of these places, that is not going to be viable for phototourism. So trophy hunting is often one of those activities that creates those local benefits, creates the national level benefits, and also, which is often forgotten, it creates things like meat for local people, which is very important when you've often got food insecure communities and shouldn't be ignored in the wider debate.
So we should actually enlarge our vision. Enlarge our vision, our view. We are not alone in this room. There are many questions from outside, but I'm afraid I cannot read them. And perhaps somebody could arrange the iPad so that I can read the questions. And if somebody in this room would like to ask a question, they may do so. They may just have to join me here. And if this is not so, yes, up here, please.
Nutzen Sie
Now,
die Gelegenheit.
use this opportunity. In
Ja,
German,
ja,
yes,
ja,
of course, in
natürlich. Das ist auch
German.
sehr
That's
gut.
very good.
Ich habe nämlich
Because
gelernt,
I've learned
wir
that
müssen
we
Deutsch
should
reden,
speak
weil
German
die Übersetzung
because the
funktioniert nur in eine
translation
Richtung.
works only
Stellen Sie
in
sich
one
kurz vor
direction,
und
which
dann
is
Ihr
not
Anliegen.
true.
Sorry. Okay, dann, so you should speak English? And yes, and I try to summarize in short. Please, go ahead. No, I won't give up the mic. Tell us your name.
My name is Marianne Kourouble. I'm representing Resource Africa in Europe, and I've been involved for many years before on African wildlife, and also organize elephant illegal trade elephant survey in Africa.
A bit louder.
All right. So I wanted to ask you, what is the difference? Because I know, for instance, the Paris region, they have to hunt 400,000 wild boar per year because of conflict, increasing conflicts. And this is all decided. There is a quota, special quota organized by authorities to control this overdeveloping population. And in Africa, it's the same issue. In some countries, they have too many wild elephants or too many animals, but this is not decided just like this. It is all controlled. It's regulated by national parks.
So what is your question, and whom do you want to ask?
Yes. So why people are considering there's a difference? For me, it's exactly the same situation. So for African people, what kind of message they want to give to European people who live the same situation of increasing conflict between wild animals who are restricted to more and more limited areas because of human activities developing? So yes, I'm asking the African delegates, who wants to say to these European people, thinking that the situation in Africa is different to Europe?
Okay, ich fasse mal auf Deutsch jetzt super kurz
So I
zusammen.
will
Vielen
briefly
Dank.
summarize this
Und ich
question,
würde sagen,
and
die
I'd
Frage
say
besteht im Kern
that the
darin,
point
was
of the
unterscheidet
question
eigentlich
is
die
what is the
Situation
difference between the situation
Europa und
prevailing
in
in
Afrika,
Europe
wenn es
and in Africa with respect
Wildschutz
to the
oder
protection
Umgang
of
mit
wildlife
wilden
or
Tieren
the
angeht.
management of
Ich hoffe, sehe
wildlife.
hier Zustimmung.
I hope that everybody agrees to my translation.
I think the reason why we are here is exactly to discuss that question. And as you can see from the theme of why we are here, it's respecting the rights and the resources and our livelihoods. I think that is the key in terms of Europeans should start respecting us. I know Africa is a big continent. We are all diverse, but the parts from where we are coming from, we have a very bad history. I'm a Namibian. I have a very bad history with Germany. You guys know that. That is our history. But we want to move on as young people. We want to move on. And to move on means first respect me. If you respect me, then we will be on an equal table so that we can move ahead. We realize in other areas, there's lots of respect. But when it comes to this area, a lot of Europeans feel we need to talk on your behalf. But it's our resources. How do you ignore us? So exactly that is, it's a human rights issue here. You cannot talk about colonialism that you have left it, but you don't respect my rights. It's a bit contradicting. So let's start with respect. You respect Africans' rights, we will respect each other, and we will talk at the same level. I think this is where I think why we are here. We will not be here if that was not the case. So I don't know whether my other colleagues will want to add, but this is where I want to start. That is the problem, is respect.
Yes. Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Yes. I think
Floor is yours. Rogers.
Okay, can I go on? Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think, Max has put it very well. I think we are traveling on this trip to actually, as ambassadors of our communities, ambassadors of our people, so that we can explain to the world, to the global world, that we have played our part as African communities in Southern Africa to look after these resources. We know that these resources, they are very important to us, but they are also valuable to the entire world. But I think what is more important is that we would like to move on a mutual respect, on mutual understanding, so that we appreciate each other's boundaries, we appreciate each other's rights. So I think we are on this trip to actually say, look, we have done our part, give us space, we are willing to collaborate with you at different levels, but when it comes to making decisions around the use of these resources, I think we should be given that respect, that room, because I think we deserve that respect. So we would like to be part of the global community. We know we are friends, we do certain things together, but I think we just want to pass this message that as leaders, as community leaders of our communities in Southern Africa, we would like to work with the global world, but in a manner that we respect one another, we understand and appreciate that we play a...
Yes, it's about equal rights, of course, meeting each other at eye level. Now you're frozen. Sorry, your picture is frozen. The sound also seems to be frozen.
But you respect how we do our things. So I think I just wanted to support that statement by Max. Thank you.
Ja. Ja, vielen herzlichen Dank, Rogers.
Thanks a lot, Rogers.
Trotzdem, ich würde jetzt gerne nochmal Siyoka fragen.
I would like to ask Siyoka again in Botswana. You have many elephants. Can you really compare elephants with wild boar and the way they're treated in Botswana? Are there killing quota? Do you really have to shoot them? Just because Parisians in the Paris metropolis kill their wild boar, do you have to do the same with the elephants in Botswana?
Let me give you a clear perspective of Botswana. What happens here in Botswana? The carrying capacity of our area is 54,000 elephants. But we're currently sitting at over 134,000 elephants within our area. So the largest number of elephants in the world. And this has actually created more conflicts within our areas. For that, the government has actually released quotas. We are expected to actually kill about 400 as per the CITES quota, but we kill less than that, less than 400 elephants within a quota, and that does not even make a dent within what is happening. But what we have, the approach in the country is integrated land use planning, where we respect photographic, hunting tourism and agricultural practice or agricultural use. So this is how we actually, divide our areas. So in order for the community to start, working on or either practicing hunting or doing photographic, they basically do a monthly plan for use within their areas, and this actually gives them the guide as to what kind of practice would be done within that area. So there is some kind of a system. So we don't just go out and start shooting elephant. There is a system, the quotas that comes from the government after a thorough surveys that are done. Maybe to also score a point, during the time when we had a hunting ban, if you look at the study that was done by Mike Chase, a lot of elephants died during those periods when there was no hunting happening within Botswana. If you go back to that study, you find that. But that was not happening if you go back 2014 downwards. There was less, poaching that was happening during the time when there was hunting practice going on. So in a way, it also helped to reduce the poaching that actually happens. Thank you.
Okay, sustainability also means that you fight poaching, of course. Stefan, there's many aspects. Stefan, would you like to come in again, or are there any other questions? Yes, we have received more questions in the meantime. I hope that we can all put them in the right moment and to the right person. I quite like this question here. An unknown, somebody who's anonymous, has said, trophy hunters kill the people with the biggest horns, the largest antlers, and the biggest mane. Studies show us that genetic diversity or biodiversity is threatened by this. And now the question, the real question, how can trophy hunting then be sustainable or can protect wildlife? I think biological diversity, you can maybe come in and take this question. Well, what's important to know is that an animal is killed once it has had a sufficient chance to contribute to the genetic pool or the gene pool of the species. So if hunters kill that animal, the animal has already spread their genes, so there's no problem there. I only know of one study with a problem, and the author of the study has demonstrated, and that was in Canada, that a certain sheep with a certain size, as of a certain size, was killed. So the biggest sheep, even though they were very young, were killed. This is not the case with sustainable trophy hunting, and it's not the case with tourism, hunting tourism abroad. A hunter must stand a chance to really kill these people. So a minority of the animals killed, only the oldest ones. I don't really see that in the context of the herds and the spread of the genes. Well, it depends on the species, of course. With most horned animals, but also with predators, lions, for example, buffaloes, the oldest animals are not really integrated into the herd. You can only sustainably hunt a lion if they're no longer in the group, but they hunt separately, and this will also impact the population. Okay, maybe I can pass this on question to Professor Dickman in Oxford. Now, how can you discuss this against the background of sustainability?
So I think it is one of those topics that's very poorly misunderstood and is often shared as misinformation in this debate, that because hunters actually want, as they say, the biggest animals, that must be contributing towards genetic decline. As someone touched on there's actually very, very little empirical evidence to support that. There is a small amount of study, as I say, from bighorn sheep, but these things are under very intense selection pressures. And even actually the author of that study has actually pushed back and said it shouldn't be used just to push for blanket bans. It's much more complicated than this, and that sustainable hunting can still be very much a part of conservation. So I think it's very important to think for species like lions, there can be impacts when you take lions from a population. And actually, if you take those older males, they can still be part of a pride, they can still be breeding. The real issue is that for a species like lions, you need them to have reproduced and have had enough stability in the pride so that the cubs can reach, at least sort of maybe 18 months, 2 years old, where they're not going to be where they're not going to be killed by an incoming male coming in. So what you don't want to have is lots of younger males who've just taken over the pride and they've bred and there are young cubs, then have those ones shot, because then you get the pride takeover and then those new young cubs will be killed and the same thing will happen again and again. That's when the problem comes. So it's very important to have age-based regulations for these species. And actually, if you stick to the older males, for species like lions, there are good evidence that if you take away the older males, it has very little impact on the overall population. The animals that you don't want taken out are the females and the younger males. And ironically, if you take away the trophy hunting without a better land use ready to bring in the revenue and incentivize conservation, what you will see is much more indiscriminate hunting. And killing, you will see much more poaching, much more conflict. And that tends to involve the females and the younger males more than selectively targeting these older males. And for other species like black rhinos, for example, it actually can be advantages to the population if you take away those older males. So again, like anything, you have to know the complexity of the area, of the species, but it is certainly not true to simplistically say that taking away these big animals will drive a genetic decline. What will drive the decline is indiscriminate and high volume removing of animals. And that tends to happen not with well-regulated, low volume hunting, but with the indiscriminate hunting and habitat loss that drives actually the major threats to wildlife.
Okay, so to be sustainable means that you know what you're doing. I would like to make another quote from the World Wildlife Fund, where we have no representatives here today, but we found a most recent interview by Bild Zeitung and WWF. Arnulf Kühnke said the following. There's well-documented evidence for the fact that strictly controlled trophy hunting can be an effective protection of species, where conservation as well as the local communities will benefit. However, it has also shown that trophy hunting doesn't really work with conservation. Too many animals are killed, regulations are not implemented, and the money goes into all the wrong channels. Right. Well, I don't know. Only the first part was about the sheep. I don't know whether you could hear this because the volume in the room here was quite low. The second part said, yes, this is correct, but there are things that don't work. Too many animals are killed, regulations are there, but they're not implemented. And I would like to stress, the money, the income goes into all the wrong channels. So there is actually income. We have heard that why should we take money from wealthy hunters who are prepared to pay for it? But the question is where the money goes. And this is why I would like to address our African panelists once again. Rogers in Namibia. I mean, you can probably never exclude this sort of mismanagement and that money goes into the wrong channels. We also have people who don't pay their taxes here in Germany. But how can you make sure that the money is received by those who, well, deserve it and who have earned it? Rogers, can you take this question? Well, probably not received. Maybe we've lost the connection.
Yeah,
Maxi, you also cooperate with the NGOs, don't you?
Yes. Thank you so much. I mean, my experience is that from where I come from, the money goes 100% back to the communities and it pays for conservation. The reason why there is hundreds of elephants in Botswana, in Zambia, the reason why we have rhinos that are surviving outside parks in the communities, that tells you that there is a model that is working. There is no model that is perfect. I think you mentioned that sometimes people don't even pay tax in Germany. But Germany does not say because people don't pay tax, we have to cancel the tax. They say, well, how can we tweak here? How can we tweak there? And the reason why we are here, we are not saying that everything works 100%. Nothing works 100%. But we can sit together and we can tweak so that it can work. And that's what adaptation is, something that we can do, and it's something that has worked that can work. So I think we should not just cancel something because it's not working. We can always tweak because there is positives in terms of way it's working. Yes, there is challenges, and we need to work around those challenges, to be honest.
Right, but we don't have to to be there to tell you. Of course, everybody's aware of that. But there's more statements, your question. Yes, I would like to take a question by David.
You got it. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah.
Yes. So I wanted to actually say that CBNRM, or the sustainable use or conservation approaches that we apply in Southern Africa, you see, apart from the benefits itself that it generates going to communities to improve livelihood or conservation, we find that where we practice CBNRM, it has actually contributed to the democratization of our communities. There's more transparent now in our communities. There's more awareness. So communities have become more aware of their rights. So it supports good governance processes and so on. And of course, like my colleague has mentioned, even democracy, which is so much preached in Europe, is not perfect, or in the Western world. So even this process of Siebenheim process are not perfect, but I think they play a greater good, and would like to continue in that direction. Thank you.
Ja, also
Okay, thank you. So the process is an approach, but it's of course far from perfect. Yes, and there's another question coming in by David Doncham, who said there's criticism about trophy hunting, the fact that the benefit doesn't go to the local communities, but only to the hunting operators and the owners of lodges. How can you make sure that the income is fairly distributed?
No, that's a question we've heard Ms. Rogers and Maxi. I don't know. How can we make sure that the revenues are properly, evenly distributed? We cannot talk about this, mainly our African participants. Yoga, could you comment on this? How can we make this sure?
Yeah, basically, these communities are not, they have structures. They have administration bodies. They have a board of governors that actually see to it that the income that is actually gained from, sustainable hunting is actually distributed equally within the community, or it's actually used in the way that the community have detected to be used. Either it's actually to build a school, to put up water for the community, drinking water for the community, to basically fund scholarship for their children to go for higher education. So basically, it's the community that basically decide. So in most cases, all the community-based organizations, they have structures where the money goes, and we, they might be at different levels. As community leaders network, umbrella bodies within our countries, we are working with these communities to strengthen these structures so that the distribution of the income becomes so fair. There is no process that does not have hiccups, but as time goes on, we improve these processes that are there. But we are here to assure you that the communities are the ones who decide. They have proper structures that are recognized by laws within the countries that are operating. So that's how we basically operate. Thank you.
Yeah, das sind Strukturen, das sind Berichte.
Yeah, so these are structures. Report now as to Botswana, please.
So since we're in Europe, and we're talking about Europe.
Da wir ja hier in Europa sind und wir über die europäische Politik reden, ich glaube, es gibt eine Möglichkeit, dass Europa wirklich zu einem Partner wird. Und anstatt der Einstellung, wir sagen euch, wie ihr es machen müsst, sollte man uns als gleichberechtigt wahrnehmen. Es gibt sehr viele Herausforderungen und Probleme, auch bei der Jagdbranche, die Gleichberechtigung, die Verbesserung der Machtverhältnisse. Es gibt sehr viele Herausforderungen, aber es gibt Möglichkeiten, dass auch Europa und die europäischen Länder die afrikanischen Gemeinden unterstützen können, dabei, dass sie das Niveau heben in der gesamten Jagdbranche in Afrika. Und dies kann man tun über ein intelligentes Verbot von Importen. Wenn also ein Jagdveranstalter dorthin geht, dann muss er halt eben auch belegen, dass er tatsächlich einen Beitrag geleistet hat zum Artenschutz und zur Verbesserung der Lebensgrundlage. Und sie machen das, indem sie zusammenarbeiten mit den afrikanischen Unternehmen. Also es geht um die Herausforderungen, die wir bewältigen können. Wie können wir das lösen? Und dann hat man auch eine umsetzbare Politik.
Also praktischer Vorschlag. Trotzdem möchte ich gerne noch ein Zitat einbringen, genau zu dieser Frage,
That's a
dass das
practical
Geld bei den Falschen landet, nämlich vielleicht bei den
proposal.
Veranstaltern,
But
den
nevertheless, there's the question that the revenues end up with the wrong people, the operators, the hunting, tourism operators. And there's also a sentence, a statement by German animal welfare organizations. According to an IUCN report from 2009, the local population in Africa earns on average only 3% per person and year that hunters from abroad kill elephants, lions or giraffes. Now this is a question to Ms. Rowe. 3%, this is almost nothing. It's just a drop in a bucket. And so we could also do without it, this income. Could we?
Thanks for the question. Just before I answer, I just want to clarify that 2009 IUCN report that you're citing is a report that was published by one program within IUCN, and it contains a clear disclaimer that the findings within it are the views of the consultant author and not the views of IUCN. And that figure is one that's much debated and often brought up in these discussions about trophy hunting. And the origins of that 3% figure come from an analysis of trophy hunting that was conducted in one place, in one country, Tanzania, in 1 year, 2006, and have since just been used as if that is the only amount that ever goes to communities. As my colleague Maxi has said, that in Namibia, where hunting happens on communal land, 100% of the fee that hunters pay for that concession goes back to the communities who have the rights to manage that land. So the figure is hugely variable from country to country and from context to context. And how much the figure is and how it gets distributed really depends on the governance structure of the hunting operation and on the policy of the government as much as anything else. So equally, you can look at any industry and dispute how much of it, how it's distributed. Look at tourism, how much of that money goes down to the local level. Look at fishing, how much of that money goes to the local level. So quite often hunting is presented as if it's the only industry where, in some cases, not a huge amount of money goes to the local level. And I think it's also important to remember that it's not just about the amount of money that's captured by the community, but about the other income streams that are generated through hunting. So it also provides employment for a certain number of community representatives. And I think, as Amy Dickman also said, it generates meat, it provides other socioeconomic benefits. So I think it's really easy to just take a snapshot and say, gosh, look at this one particular case and how bad is this, and then assume that applies across the board. I think it's important to recognize that there are good cases and there are bad cases, and the same applies to hunting as it does to tourism and to any other industry where income gets distributed between different stakeholders.
Yeah, snapshot is a very good expression. So 3%, that is the buzzword, but it's not so. It's much more complicated. Thank you for this clarification. Now I would like to come back to what we briefly touched upon before. That is that one animal welfare organization didn't come and mention this, and one of these is Pro Wildlife, and they said, well, we are not coming because there will not be a proper discussion, we assume. Pro Wildlife is also saying that there was an open letter written by the CLN, that is the Community Leaders Network, and this open letter was nothing but an easily recognizable PR campaign organized by the hunting lobby. And we will also present this open letter to you, but first of all, Gail, you are the communication expert. And what campaign is this put forward by Pro Wildlife together with the open letter? Give us the background, please.
So the open letter that they referred to is something that CLN felt that they needed to respond to. It's based on particularly groups in the UK, animal rights groups in the UK, putting pressure on the British government to ban hunting imports, do something about hunting, and really how the letter came to be was that as we are sitting right here, you just heard Maxi say that they feel very strongly about this, that an organization like one of these animal rights organizations cannot just speak for Africa. So they feel strongly about that, and therefore they want to write this open letter. So it had nothing at all to do with the trophy hunting industry. No one consulted a hunter. No one needs to consult hunters. My colleagues at the CLN are perfectly capable of telling you their own opinions, and I think it is extremely insulting when an African stands up to give you their honest opinion, that you say, oh no, you're just talking for this lobby or that lobby. Whereas when a European stands up and gives you their opinion, you say, oh yes, that's your opinion. So I think when people are giving their honest opinion, you need to respect them. As Maxi says, it comes down to respect, and say, yes, we hear your opinion, and let's do something about it. So that is, the open letter was really Africans expressing their honest opinion about something, and that honest opinion did upset people, but it should be respected as their own opinion and not a mouthpiece of the hunting industry.
Okay, and before now actually discussing this open letter, Resource Africa has also put this into a brief video clip. You have been advocating the ban of hunting in Africa. We see that you're doing this with the best of intention, and we welcome your interest in our wildlife. In your demand, however, you haven't taken into account what the impact on our population, on our wildlife is. Actually, based on campaigns like this, the positive results of regulated hunting for our wildlife population are characterized as myths. We invite you to come and see us in order to witness the reality of nature conservation in Africa.
Und die Einladung steht.
Okay, this is an invitation to travel to Africa and see this for ourselves. But now I will hand over to the Dortmund City Council. Yeah, and I will start a contrast program. We've been talking for 90 minutes, and we started with the introduction of the city councillors. And we reminded you of an important meeting in February of this year when a member of the Green political group, Amel Jenny, said something which we will now be playing to you. It's the original version, and this is some input for the discussion. So, white man flies to Africa, and without considering ecological context, without any ethical and legal animal welfare requirements, and without any reasonable reason, they travel to kill animal species threatened by extinction to take the trophies back home. Well, we do not need the white man for this. The regulation of animal population for sustainable conservation can actually be handled by the people in Africa themselves.
Ja, und bei mir ist auch dazu eine Frage eingegangen. Da heißt es, sind Jagdreisen nicht auch reguliert?
Hunting trips not regulated as well?
Herr Genet sagte ja.
Mr. Genet said.
Ja, ich würde eigentlich gerne auf, das ist ein Abgeordneter der Grünen, habe ich verstanden.
Yes, I understand this was a member of the Green Party, apparently
und ich finde es erstmal etwas eigenartig auf der Basis der Hautfarbe argumentieren. Okay, es gibt schwarze Deutsche, es gibt auch weiße Afrikaner.
White Africans and also black Germans. So this is not the argument. So you must say those who must live with the animals, and certainly the Africans are able to regulate their own animal populations, and hunting regulations and animal management are two different things. But hunting tourism can actually provide an income to Africa. This is a product of Africa that is a rich animal kingdom. They can market this, sell it, benefit from it, and it's a big difference whether Africans shoot the animals, use the meat, and throw away the trophies, or whether a hunter from abroad leaves a lot of money there, spends a lot of money, and takes the meat. The meat will always be used, but the trophy would not be used, and this is an additional income for the benefit of the people who must live with the animals. So this is a value on top, so to speak. And this is the main difference. And this actually makes animal protection acceptable. So we want to reap a maximum benefit for local populations so that wild animals will be protected.
Nee, ich wollte nur sagen, also hier gibt es auch schon wieder erste Stimmen dazu. Das Internet ist schnell, zu dem, was wir gerade gehört haben. Und ich mache es jetzt mal kurz, weil wir schon ganz schön weit in der Zeit sind. Dazu werden Stimmen aus Afrika gewünscht, die reagieren auf das, was Sie aus Dortmund gehört haben.
Could you please respond to what you heard from the meeting in the Dortmund City Council?
Yeah, first of all, my brother, I think, who was speaking, the language he's using, I'm a bit puzzled. We have moved on. As a continent, we don't even speak white people. I was a bit shocked that he uses that form of expression, because where I come from, we have moved on. We don't live in the 1800s referring to people in that way. So that is one thing. But I also just want to emphasize that. And I said it at the beginning that, we also just want to trade and being recognized as people that are in business. One of the things about Africans nowadays, and when you also talk to local communities, I work a lot with local communities, is that the issue of aid has become a problem also to Africa as a whole. People want to be recognized getting up in the morning, just like any other human being in Europe or in Germany, working for something and earning a living and have the respect to be able to do something. That's what people want. Is it too much for them to ask that? Is it too much for them to say, I want to trade, even if it's trophy hunting that nobody likes, as long as we do it responsibly, and as long as we do it within the regulations? I think it can be done, and we have started doing that in some parts of Africa. Yes, we do acknowledge in parts of Africa that there is a lot of work to be done in those parts. But the parts where we come from, it works. It really works, and I'm inviting you to come and see for yourselves. So we should not kill something that works, that builds, so that we can have a very good conservation in Africa as a whole. Thank you. Yeah.
I would like to come back to this aspect, whether hunting trips are really necessary for sustainable tourism and animal protection, nature conservation. Or to put it differently, this has been said a couple of times, photo safari, photo tourism versus hunting, trophy hunting. So why not photo tourism?
In Namibia, where I come from, not everywhere can you have tourism. The country is a contrasting country from most of you that have been there, but I gather that is for most of Africa. It's not everywhere that you can do some tourism. So there is areas where you cannot do tourism. So for us, it's about balance. And balance is good, even for human beings. If you do lots of things, it balances. So for us, it's about balance, and both is needed. And hunting or trophy hunting is needed.
Yeah,
exactly. And what is more, we will now get an opinion from another African person from the internet about this very subject. That is about Conservancy in Namibia. Most of the people, that is 5,000 people, live from hunting. So what if hunting is banned? 5,000 people and their livelihoods would be directly affected. They would not have income any. Yeah, so this was an opinion from Namibia, and he underlined what Maxi also said. And now I'm looking around, and Stefan, please, your turn. Yeah, I've received another very interesting question, and the question is there any position, any person, in addition to this green member, which is known, another position in the Green Party? And Well, we do not have a Green Party, which is not another one. But there is something, so the discussion about the German Ministry for the Environment. Mrs. Lemke is the Minister for the Environment, and she pronounced herself clearly against trophy hunting. And now the Federal Ministry for the Environment issued an opinion at the request of the German press agency. On the basis of conservation measures, we want to reduce the import of species which are protected. So that is a wishing and wanting, what they're saying there. We want to play it, but I can repeat this. The basis of conservation measures and the import of trophies should be reduced, and in individual cases, the ministry says the import of trophies should be banned completely, in particular if there are any doubts about the sustainability and legality of the hunt. And this is a question which was also put to the director of the Namibian Chamber for the Environment. We heard him before, Chris Brout, and he answered this directly.
My message
to the Green Party is, are you interested in conservation? Are you interested in results? Are you interested in sound, healthy wildlife populations in Africa? And are you also interested in the people in Africa who live with their wildlife in the long term? If so, if your general answer to this is yes, then the attempt to ban hunting is not the proper way of doing it. Hunting is a very important part of nature and species conservation. And if you do not believe this sitting in Europe, then come and visit us in Africa and we will demonstrate it to you so that you will really understand it. The message which you are getting from the animal rights organization is not an honest one about nature and species conservation. An honest statement is that well-regulated hunting is a very important, even an essential part of good. So I will try to summarize this, and we are now coming to the end of the discussion, and we'll start again where we began. I can say that we've got several questions, and I think we cannot answer them because of the lack of time. But at least, but they have already been answered, at least in part, during the debate. And now I would like to ask the representatives of the three parties to come forward. You are five of 91 city councillors in Dortmund. And when you go back after this meeting, and you told us why you have come here in the first place, so I would like to ask you what will be different, what will you input in the council when you go back. And I will start with a surprise, that is the opposite alphabetical order, that is Mr. Vogeler. You will start, please. Yeah, I initially said so, and I believe that the truth between what we heard on the city council from Mr. Andrené, and I could talk to him afterwards, and what the African states think about themselves is pretty big. There is a huge difference, and this has confirmed me. I appreciate talking about this, but I would also have appreciated the Green Party being here attending this instead of just posting something on Instagram in the meantime, because then we could perhaps also have accepted some other attitudes, opinions. That's an integral part of an exchange. But this has now confirmed my views about hunting in Africa. It's been very informative. Thank you. Perhaps you could explain to me what you could see on Instagram. Who saw it on Instagram?
Das ist gut.
The planned restriction of the import of hunting trophies is the start of the end of an unethical practice at the Dortmund fairground. As the Green Party, we advocate a ban on the marketing of hunting trips with hunting trophies. And you should also give us the source and the time, please. Yeah, Mr. Genet, and the time. I can't see it. I can't see the time here.
Ja, 16 Uhr jedenfalls während der
a couple of
Debatte,
minutes
das
after
heißt,
4 o'clock, so during the debate, so he must have been listening to us. And now, your final comment, please. I haven't heard your final comment. First of all, thank you very much indeed for this information which I could gather here from the African participants, and this is in line with the results of my research on the internet. And another important point has been made clear today, that is respect, the respect of the African population. And we should not think that we in Europe can tell people in Africa what they should do. If we do it here with respect to hunting, where else would we do it? Where would it stop? It's really a pity that nobody from the Green Party has been here today to make a statement that's part of a proper political discourse also outside the City Council, and that is why we organize such events. And I'm in two minds about hunting, as I must admit. But this subject, or restricting this to trophy hunting, well, actually, this is too little. Much more is related to this when you just look at all the rangers who will have jobs. So I think that we must consider the entire problem, what it means for the African countries and what the impact would be. And the discussion today has confirmed my views.
Was nehmen Sie mit zurück aus dieser Veranstaltung?
Mr. Grimm, what are you taking home today? What's your information level, if you like? Okay, I mean, it was nice to have had this exchange here. It is very important to listen to the local people, to the communities in Africa. Of course, being determined by somebody outside is never good, but there is other ways and means to input money into the communities than just killing the most beautiful animal you can find. But we don't live in a perfect world. And if this is the situation and the solution at the moment in order to do conservation and protect animal rights, we must do this. I don't have a fixed opinion about this. It would be nice to change this, I think, by having other income sources than killing with a gun. You've said first, Mr. Esfeld, that you said, I want to learn here. Have you heard anything here that you're going to communicate later? Yes, I can only subscribe to my colleague what he said here. I would also prefer to have a different solution, but I wouldn't be arrogant enough to say to other people and to tell other people in Africa, for example, what they should and shouldn't do. I can't imagine that they want to destroy their own environment, their own nature. I can only say personally that the most we can do is support, to know what local people want, local communities want, to channel the income correctly. What can we do in order for these benefits to arrive in the right place? We can certainly support this, but the basic decision as to what should be done by the local communities. And if they need our support, we can provide it. And it's probably also desirable to have it. What can we do, for example, if there's a trophy hunting, if an African government wants to have better regulation, we can give you support on the European side of things. But to generally say, we know what's best for you is wrong, I think. It's not what I and the Social Democrats want. Thank you. Mr. Esfeld from the SPD, and the final statement from the City Council, Ms. Divish. Well, I couldn't really form a firm opinion after this discussion. I still find it difficult to put a dead animal on the wall and pay money for that. I mean, I can understand opinions if people want this income and if it's important for them. I think it's important to have good regulation. Also, the operators here at Jagd und Hund trade show that we have an ethics commission and that we have strong regulation and management, that we only have legal operators. I don't like the Green Party to not attend if they criticize. I mean, I found it difficult to also do some party bashing here today. I mean, it's their job to do this, and it's their job and their mandate, and they should be criticized for it. Okay, yeah, they've offered their opinion, but your opinion is also quite okay. I mean, to communicate this here. We've invited you to make your opinion heard here. Thank you very much. Well, we've seen that it's difficult to have a discussion with somebody who then doesn't attend the meeting. It's always disadvantageous. And there's a little degree of, frustration. Maybe we can repeat this meeting, but we have now started a kind of momentum also by the invitation, also by the ethics committee. We've heard a lot, many different aspects. I would like to conclude by having this round here with you. If I were a spirit that could make one wish of you come true, if you could make a wish, what would be your wish? I can tell you 3 wishes. Today, we've heard many statements here and beliefs, and I think we must go away from these beliefs. We must have a more fact-based and unemotional discussion, and not just a discussion about beliefs. So I think it is important that conservation always has 2 pillars, sustainability as well as biodiversity, and we know the 2 together, and also globally. Protection without the use is just a phenomenon that you have in wealthy societies, but I wouldn't be sufficiently arrogant to sell this to the rest of the world. I think we need both ways, both pillars. We know more responsibility-based ethics than just belief ethics. And I think many people have also said this here today, we must stop to assume the rest of the world that they can't control and manage their own things. They can do. They're perfectly capable of doing this. And we should maybe also focus on our own problems. Well, these weren't really desires or wishes. They were really appeals to everybody. Thank you. Stefan, have you got a wish also? Well, I would wish that based on the big crisis of biodiversity that we have, we shouldn't ban and stop the instrument from working, but just use it where it fits in. We have sufficient examples for that. They were all mentioned here today. I think the species must benefit and the people must benefit, so that the people can then protect the species and wildlife. Thank you. Have you got a wish to make?
Yeah, I think I would like to see much deeper and broader understanding of the issue. So deeper in terms of, as we have discussed here, it's very complicated. So for people to understand the depth of what we are talking about, but many, many, many more people, broader, to understand at least something about what they're talking about, because a lot of the pressure on politicians comes from a simple understanding, a shallow understanding, or no understanding of the issue. So I would like society as a whole to have a much deeper and broader understanding, and to bring that understanding to the table when they discuss these issues.
Jetzt Maxi ist auf dem Sprung, aber ich komme noch nicht. Ich komme noch nicht.
Maxi, you're leaving. You're about to leave, but no. Let's turn to the UK first of all. Dillis Rowe. I would like to also ask you: have you got a wish for politicians or for governments? If there was a wish that they could fulfill for you, would you like to make a wish?
Yeah, my wish would just be that political decisions were based on scientific evidence and rather than on the whims of and the emotions of the British public. But I know that's a hard wish, given that politics has to respond to the voters of the day if politicians want to get re-elected. But I really think we need evidence-based policy making, not emotion-based policy making.
Okay. Emotionen versus Politik.
Okay, emotions versus empirics. Thank you. Amy, what would be your wish?
Yeah, well, I fully support what others have said, but I would wish for more clarity in this discussion, in what it's really about. So some people are pushing for hunting bans. If it's about a moral reality that we shouldn't be hunting or killing animals, then I would like to see European countries do that domestically first. So they stop hunting and killing of animals in their countries, rather than just focusing on import bans elsewhere. If it's not about the fact that killing animals is wrong, and it's more about conservation, then I echo what Dilys said, that we need to be focusing on the conservation evidence. And the conservation evidence is clear, that trophy hunting does not threaten any species in any major way at the moment, and that removing it without a better alternative ready is likely to increase conservation risks, not decrease it.
Thank you. Rogers, you've just been nodding your head. What would be your wish for politicians and policymakers?
Thank you so much. Actually, my wish for politicians back home and Europe is that they should take into account the interests of the communities, the rights of the communities. So my wish is that European politicians, yes, I think we still want to cooperate. We still insist, we still want to cooperate. There are a lot of things that we can do together. But I think as they sit to make decisions, as they sit, of course, to satisfy the requirement of their citizens, they should also respect our contribution as communities who persevere and go through all the challenges of human-wildlife conflicts, opportunity cost that associate itself to create, land for wildlife conservation and stuff. Yeah, so I think my wish is that they will hear us during this trip. Those that will be able to meet, we hope they will hear us, and that we can open a new chapter of cooperation, a new chapter where they respect and understand that we have our rights and would like to continue on that direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A very important word. Thank you to Zambia. Mr. Simasiko from Botswana, your wish for politicians, please.
My wish is for the politicians to recognize our conservation practice, our conservation success. I would actually want the politicians, before they make the decision, to take into the account the communities living with these wildlife. Would also want to invite them to come to Southern Africa, to basically engage with the communities within our areas before they make laws that would actually prevent the community from benefiting from these resources. Thank you.
Thank you to Botswana. Coming back to Dortmund here, but we're still hearing your voices from Namibia.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Konstantin. I think for me, it's my wish is to continue to connect, and we have started that connection with politicians, and we would like to continue that connection. If my wish can be realized, I will be very happy. My second wish, and it's a wish that we all have. We have one thing in common, is that we need to we are trying to secure the habitats for our wildlife. Is it not a wish that everybody has here, to make sure we have more animals? But to do that, we have to do it the right way. We need to have more of these discussions in a respectful way, debate, make sure, as Emmy has said, use science to inform us and not emotions, so that we can move forward. So if I have those two wishes fulfilled, I'll be a happy woman going back.
Thanks a lot for being here. Thank you for joining us online. I know it's very strenuous to listen and participate, but Fortunately, the internet line was okay to Zambia, to Botswana, and to the UK. Thank you very much. Thank you to all our panelists for having come to traveled all the way to Germany, to Dortmund. So we can still go on discussing here in the room, if you like, with the floor, so that we can continue with our discussion. I mean, this was the first international conference for wildlife management, and maybe we can have a sequel to this conference later on. Thank you very much, and have a very good evening.
Thank you.
Als Vertreter von Millionen von Afrikanern in ländlichen Regionen, von denen die Mehrheit unterhalb der Armutsgrenze lebt, appellieren wir dringend an Sie, populäre Persönlichkeiten, damit aufzuhören, unsere weltweit anerkannten Naturschutzbemühungen und die nachhaltige Nutzung unserer natürlichen Ressourcen, von denen die Lebensgrundlagen unserer Gemeinschaften abhängen, zu unterminieren. Sie haben sich für die Jagdbeendigung in Afrika eingesetzt. Wir sehen ein, dass Sie dies mit den besten Absichten tun, und wir begrüßen Ihr Interesse an unseren Wildtieren. Sie haben bei Ihrer Forderung jedoch nicht die Auswirkungen auf unsere Bevölkerung oder die Wildtiere berücksichtigt. Tatsächlich werden von den Kampagnen wie dieser die positiven Ergebnisse regulierter Jagd für unsere Wildtierbestände als Mythen abgetan. Wir laden Sie ein, uns zu besuchen, um Zeuge der Wirklichkeit von Naturschutz in Afrika zu werden. Erfolgreicher Naturschutz beginnt bei uns, die Seite an Seite mit gefährlichen Wildtieren, deren Wert tief in unserer Kultur verankert ist, leben. Während der Kolonialzeit nahmen uns europäische Kolonialisten das Recht, diese Tiere zu nutzen und von ihnen zu profitieren. In vielen Fällen wurden wir gewaltsam von unserem Land vertrieben, oft um Platz für Schutzgebiete zu schaffen. Dies führte zu einem dramatischen Verlust an Wildtieren und deren Lebensraum. Nach der Unabhängigkeit integrierten die Regierungen Wildtiere durch integrative Naturschutzansätze in die ländliche Wirtschaft. Dies schuf sozioökonomische Anreize, mit unseren Wildtieren zu leben und sie nachhaltig zu bewirtschaften. Im Schnitt stammen 50-90% dieser wirtschaftlichen Anreize aus nachhaltiger, regulierter, humaner und wissenschaftlich überwachter Jagd. Dies hat im Gegensatz zu anderen Regionen in der Welt, in denen sich der Verlust der biologischen Vielfalt und die Zerstörung von Lebensräumen in katastrophaler Geschwindigkeit vollzieht, zu einem Anstieg der Wildtierpopulationen im südlichen Afrika geführt. Auch wenn Sie Elefanten, Löwen und andere Wildtiere durch eine romantische, ideologische Brille betrachten mögen, erfordert unsere Lebensrealität neben diesen großartigen, schützenswerten, aber gefährlichen Tieren mehr Pragmatismus. Wir machen uns täglich Sorgen, dass unsere Kinder auf dem Weg zur Schule getötet werden könnten oder dass die Chancen, unsere Familien zu ernähren, innerhalb weniger Stunden durch Elefanten in unseren Feldern oder Großraubtiere in unseren Viehbeständen zunichte gemacht wird. Einige Fakten. Erst am 1. Juli 2020 tötete ein Elefant in Simbabwe einen 22-jährigen Mann, als er von seinen Feldern nach Hause ging. Im Jahr 2019 töteten Elefanten mindestens 30 Menschen im Land. Kürzlich verschwanden 2 simbabwische Geschwister aus ihrem Zuhause. Nach dem mutmaßlichen Angriff durch Hyänen konnte nur der zerstückelte Kopf des 2-Jährigen geborgen werden. Der 4-Jährige wurde nie gefunden. Trotzdem leben Elefanten, Löwen und andere Arten mitten unter uns, nicht nur in Schutzgebieten. Sie können sich vermehren, weil wir das wollen. Wenn uns der Ansporn für den Schutz von Lebensräumen und Wildtieren wegfällt, ist die harte Realität, dass ihre Zukunft in Afrika so düster sein wird, wie die der Wölfe, Braunbären und anderer großer Fleischfresser, die es einst in Großbritannien, Europa und den USA im Überfluss gab. Wir verstehen, dass das für denjenigen, der mit der Realität des ländlichen Afrikas nicht vertraut ist, wie ein Widerspruch erscheinen mag. Wenn aber das Ergebnis der Artenschutz und nicht nur die Anerkennung der Rechte einzelner Tiere ist, dann bitten wir Sie unvoreingenommen, die Fakten aus unserer Perspektive zu betrachten, die das grundlegende Menschenrecht unserer Bevölkerung beinhaltet, unsere natürlichen Ressourcen selbstbestimmt zu verwalten und von deren nachhaltiger Nutzung zu profitieren. Wenn wir unsere Familien nicht durch eine humane und nachhaltige Nutzung der Wildtiere ernähren können, werden wir keine andere Wahl haben, als Formen von Landnutzung einzuführen, die unweigerlich unsere Naturlandschaften zerstören und unsere Wildtiere ausrotten würden. Wir haben es satt, dass Menschen weit entfernt in unserem Namen reden und unsere Erfolge verunglimpfen. Wir sind ein integraler Bestandteil der Lösung für den illegalen Wildhandel, der Wilderei und die kurzfristige Nutzung der biologischen Vielfalt. Es ist enttäuschend, dass Tierrechtskampagnen zur Jagdbeendigung zwar enorme Geldsummen eingebracht haben, aber kein Beweis erbracht wurde, dass diese Gelder zum Schutz der afrikanischen Tierwelt oder unserer Kommunen, die als Beschützer dieser Wildtiere fungieren, genutzt wurden. Wem kommen diese Kampagnen zugute? Ihre Wirkung wird darin bestehen, dass sie uns das Interesse, mit Wildtieren zu leben, nehmen. Das Aufzwingen von Weltanschauungen, verstärkt durch ihre populären Stimmen, führt zu katastrophalen Richtlinien, die unsere Rechte und unsere Erfolge im Naturschutz untergraben. Wir würdigen und respektieren das Recht auf eine Debatte über afrikanischen Naturschutz. Diese Diskussion muss jedoch von uns, der eigentlichen Hüter dieser Wildtiere, unterstützt werden. Man sollte uns zumindest das Recht anerkennen, unseren Lebensunterhalt durch eine kulturell angemessene und nachhaltige Bewirtschaftung unserer Ressourcen zu verdienen. Alles andere bedeutet, die Rechte der Tiere über die Rechte von Afrikanern zu stellen. Wir schreiben diesen Brief, weil die Welt die Anerkennung und Wiedergutmachung vergangenen und gegenwärtigen Unrechts- und Glaubenssysteme auf Grundlage von Privilegien fordert. Wir möchten, dass Sie unsere Stimmen hören. Unsere Erfolge im Naturschutz und unsere Lebensrealität sind keine Mythen. Inhalt und geistiges Eigentum dieses Films gehören dem Southern African Community Leaders Network. Das ist unsere Botschaft, sind unsere Stimmen und Gesichter, die in diesem Film gezeigt werden.